Welcome to the Global Discussion, discussions with creatives, leaders and thinkers. My name is Simon Hodgkins and today I'm joined by Simon Bewick. Simon, you're very welcome to our podcast. Let's begin by asking you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do to our international audience. So over to you, Simon.
Well, thanks for having me. So my name's Simon Bewick. I'm based in the northeast of England. For those that know the area, I'm in Cullercoats, which is just outside of Whitley Bay, so about 10 miles from Newcastle upon Tyne on the coast. I come from a background in publishing. I worked for Oxford University Press for over 25 years before moving back up to the northeast, which is my hometown. And I'm involved with a literary endeavour called Bay Tales. Bay Tales grew out of, well, really, when I moved back up to the northeast, I was interested in crime fiction writing. So coming from an academic publishing background, my interest was always reading crime, mystery, thrillers. And when I moved back up to the northeast, I looked to see what was going on in that sort of world. And I was told I should check out something called Noir at the Bar, which the Northeast branch was run by a person called Vic Watson. And Noir at the Bar actually started out in Philadelphia many years ago. And there's chapters of it all around the world, and each one is slightly different. But the way Vic runs it in the Northeast was to have normally about 10 authors come to a bar and just read from their work. So I went along to one of these and thought it was a great evening. And then the pandemic hit and lockdown happened, and there was no chance to carry on doing that. I'm a kind of frustrated writer myself. I've written 4 novels, none of which have been published, and I thought, well, this was a chance to read in front of an audience and maybe start making inroads with that. But I'm sure there were people much worse affected by the lockdown than my attempts to get my writings heard from people. But what did happen as a result of that was Vic put out on social media just a question really saying, if she was to do this online, would people be interested in being involved with it? So I got in touch with Vic and said, well, my background is in digital marketing. I was global head of digital marketing for Oxford University Press. And because of the nature of OUP's business, we were probably very much ahead of the game in terms of webinars and live events online and so on, because to speak to teachers around the world, economically and practically, that was a very strong way to reach out. So I got in touch with Vic and said, I've got experience in digital. Are you okay? Do you know what you're doing with this, or would you like any help? And she said, yes, please give me some help. So together we set up virtual Noir at the Bar, which was a weekly event, happened every Wednesday, and we invited 10 authors to come online. And it was very interesting at that time. Nobody knew what Zoom was that we were inviting, and everybody's very nervous about appearing online and so on. And we thought, well, this thing's only going to last 3 or 4 weeks, isn't it? This lockdown. Well, 22 weeks later, we'd had over 200 authors appear on the show. We were starting to get quite a lot of traction, and people were really saying it had become part of their week when they couldn't really rely on anything, and everything was so different. This was a constant that they were able to tune into, come along online for free, and hear some authors that they could then, maybe authors they knew, maybe authors that were new to them, that they could then go out and buy the books. We didn't charge for it. Any donations we got, we gave to the NHS. And a couple of things happened as a result of that, really. The first thing was that I got in touch with some of the authors and said, would you be prepared to donate a free short story to put a book together? And we got 30 authors, said yes, donated a book, and along with a couple of volunteer editors, I put together Noir from the Bar, which was an anthology put together in 1 month. That was all the editing, the cover design, which my wife, who's an artist, put together for us. Zoe Sharp, an author, put the typesetting together, and we released the book, and it became an Amazon top 20 in the, after 1 week's publication. So coming from a background in publishing, I know books normally take longer than that to produce. But doing that every week was quite a toll on us. I'd set up a consultancy business. So I was working, Vic had a young child. So it was taking up a lot of time to put a professional level show on that we wanted to in that time. So we changed the format and created what we called Bay Tales. And that included setting up a website, which is www.baytales.com, where we put free fiction and non-fiction up, recordings of the shows, interviews with authors, author profiles, and so on. And we changed the online format to a monthly magazine-style show. And one of the first people we had on was Ann Cleeves, who, for those that don't know, and I think Ann Cleeves is one of the best-selling writers working in the United Kingdom now. She's the author of Vera and Shetland, among others, but those are two very successful TV shows that I know become massive hits across the US and around the world, really. But Anne also lives just less than a quarter of a mile away from me, and she's a stalwart champion of the region. And we had Anne on one of our online shows, and she said, of course, you are going to do this for real in person when we can. And when Ann Cleeves asks you something like that, you say, yes, we will. So once we started coming out of lockdown, by that point, we got quite a name for ourselves with publishers. So publishers like Simon & Schuster and Penguin and HarperCollins and Quercus and others. And we'd done a number of online author launches for them. And we, as I say, we'd got a name with them. So we went to them and said, we're thinking about putting a live festival on in Whitley Bay. And it took off from there. So in February 2022, we did our first event. And then March just gone, we did our second event, which you can see behind me. And we're now planning for our third event in March 2024. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question about who I am and my involvement, particularly around crime fiction at the moment.
Thank you, Simon, so much, because that did give us sort of join the dots a little bit in terms of the journey. And just going back to Oxford University Press, that's a 400-year-old or more establishment in terms of education, inspiring people. They're well regarded globally for quality. And you spent quite a lot of time there, didn't you?
I did, yes. So, I mean, when I left university, I did my university degree in film studies, a completely useless course to do in terms of a career, but a fantastic one to do for enjoyment and a lifelong passion around film. When I finished university, I went off to teach English in Japan. So I lived there for a while. And when I came back, I started working with OUP, first as a sales rep, or as we called it in the business, pedagogic consultant, and basically working with English language teaching. So throughout my career with OUP, I took various roles, did a lot of training, a lot of visiting OUP offices around the world, training them up on digital and direct marketing techniques, and running the digital campaigns for OUP's English language teaching division. Yeah. And
then obviously the triumphant return to the Northeast, out to the beautiful Whitley Bay, which is a very well-known sort of, almost tourist spot, I suppose, holiday spot, very picturesque, very relaxing.
Yes.
People who may be familiar with the area, lovely sandy beaches there. And I think what a great story as well in terms of moving from, of course, with your background and partnering up, and moving those sort of, meeting in a bar, talking about the stories, to that sort of virtual program that then all of a sudden snowballs into about 200 authors. And then, of course, you start talking to the publishers and they get involved. And then it's great when you say, and then the question is asked, well, you're going to do this in person, obviously. Well, yeah, maybe we should. I just like that way that it sort of came together. I'm sure with a lot of hard work behind the scenes, but it kind of grew out of, a passion, a love, an interest, and moving back to the Northeast.
Absolutely. And to some degree, it grew out of a necessity. As I say, working with mainstream Big Five publishers, the way we have, one thing that struck me was the way marketing works for academic publishing in some ways is very different to your fiction publishing and so on. So at OUP, and most academic publishers, really, it's very much below the line advertising and marketing. So, lots of emails. Social media is important, but really you're doing more business to business, working with schools, universities, ministries, governments, and so on. And coming in to see that mainstream publishers really hadn't done much in the way of online events or digital marketing in that respect. And I think they're very, very good at a lot of the above the line marketing stuff. So you'll see big glossy campaigns and TV, print, magazines, and so on. But I think probably I was coming at it at a different angle and with perhaps a different skill set. So to be able to help them put on some big name author launches when some of them just said, we're in a pandemic, we haven't had to deal with this before. What used to be bookshop visits or physical events suddenly had to transition into something else. And it was great for me to meet, some of my literary heroes. And we had some real highlights during that virtual noir at the bar, but also reaching out to a network. I did some support with some of the big festivals at the time, who again were either having to do hybrid events or completely online events, and didn't necessarily have anyone with any experience of that in there. So I worked with a number of festivals just to help them out and keep things going during lockdown. I mean, they did the bulk of it, but helping them run their prize awards and so on via Zoom or whichever other online piece they used. But yes, and it was great to come home. I mean, lots changed around Whitley Bay, as you say. When I grew up here, it was a big fun fair, and it was the Blackpool of the Northeast was the way it was known, and it was lots of amusement arcades and fun fairs and so on. And then I think it's fair to say Whitley Bay went through quite a rough time. It was quite run down for a number of years, and it's really just booming now. The Sunday Times voted it the best place to live in the Northeast of England recently, and actually even mentioned Bay Tales as a contributing factor, which it was incredible and lovely surprise to see in our second year, it was being held up as an event. But there's a lot of independents working here. There's a lot of independent coffee shops, restaurants, bars, shops. So it's a really energized area now, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think there's a certain passion and a certain pride and a certain drive, isn't there? There's almost this engine that business is done in the Northeast, that it's this real center with a heart to it, and people are very proud of what it outputs to the rest of the world now, and it attracts people now,
Absolutely, yes. And certainly the Northeast in general is becoming a real favorite spot for crime fiction. There's a lot obviously there's Ann Cleeves with the Vera series, which has become phenomenally popular both in print and on screen. But there's quite a long tradition of the Northeast in crime, going all the way back to Get Carter, but all the way through with series like Spender and 55 Degrees North was another one, and now there's a lot of big and very, very good crime writers working in the Northeast and setting their novels in the Northeast, that some of them we've been able to welcome on the show and indeed include at Bay Tales. So that's been very rewarding as well.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. And just, I want to come back to Bay Tales in a second, but obviously here at the Global Discussion, we love crime fiction, we love books in general, we love the reading, the act of reading, and we've interviewed quite a lot of authors and publishers along the way, and quite a number in the crime area, and some quite well regarded authors in that respect. But behind you, and I'm going to describe it because some people may only be listening on audio, but for people obviously watching on video, they can see the Bay Tales sort of sign there for this year, 2023, as we record this. And is that St. Mary's Lighthouse in sort of the icon of the pen? Is that what it is, or is it a different lighthouse?
Yeah, well, yes, notionally, I think it is. My wife actually put the original design together for both Noir at the Bar and helping with Bay Tales. So that's probably one of her paintings you can see behind us. I mean, she tends to do abstract art, actually, and she's on display at the moment around both the Northeast and was at the Royal Academy Summer Exhibition. So I asked her to dumb it down a little bit for us and put together something that was representative without being exactly. So it's kind of the lighthouse, but if you look at it in a certain way, it's also a pen, quill, nib, you know. So it works in two ways, we thought, when we put the logos together.
Yeah, very good. And coming back to Bay Tales, then I wanted to ask you the question about, obviously you've done year 2, you're heavily involved in year 3, and maybe we'll come on to that in a moment, but what was the difference between year 1 and year 2? You obviously learned a lot. It was obviously very different. It was very well attended in year 2. What have you learned? What did you find? What are you hoping to do more of with Bay Tales?
Yes, I mean, it's a 2-person operation, other than dragging my wife in to do artwork and Vic's husband to help out on the day to do certain things. Bay Tales is essentially a 2-person team, and Ann Cleeves as our patron. And Ann has been incredibly supportive. So it wasn't just her saying, go and do it. She did get behind us and help support us. And I really can't over stress how respected Ann is in the region. And it really does give you, as a new business, as a new outfit like us, trying to get people involved, to have a figurehead like Ann behind you to support. So in year 1, I would say we went along to Harrogate Crime Festival, which is the biggest festival in the UK, and you know, it's I don't think people even aspire to be Harrogate. They just accept it, that it is the grandparent of them all, and everyone else is doing their own thing. But we went along, we spoke to a few publishers about our ideas, and I think because we'd established our credentials from the online stuff, when we suggested to them our business model, which is unusual for a crime festival, and our plans for it, the first 3 publishers we spoke to on that day, Simon & Schuster, Penguin, and Transworld, immediately said, yes, we're in. You know, we're in. The 4th publisher we spoke to, who I won't name, kind of looked sniffy and said, why would anybody bother go to the Northeast when there's things happening in London? And I was a bit taken aback by that, especially as we were in Harrogate at the time, which is, for those that don't know, in Yorkshire, which is fairly far up north. So the response was, well, we'll think about it possibly. So it's so nice to be able to say, by the end of that day, when we spoke to another 2 publishers, they both said yes immediately. They brought along some of the biggest and best writers they had, who had big books coming out, either well-established authors or big debut authors. I've been involved in a lot of physical events over the years through Oxford and other endeavours. So we knew what we were doing, but it went better than we possibly could have hoped for on that first day. We hold the event at Whitley Bay Playhouse, which is a 620-seat venue, which is a fair size to put something on like a crime fiction festival where people aren't necessarily sure what that involves. And the feedback we've had from everyone involved, really publishers and authors, is it's a bit of a different crowd we get at this festival. At some of the other festivals, they're real crime fiction aficionados who go to every festival going. Whereas we have a lot of people coming to ours who may have recognized Ann Cleeves' name on the list, or one of the other authors, but haven't been to a festival before. So what we heard a lot of times on the first year was, oh, it sounds a bit intellectual for me to go to a literary festival, and came away saying it was the best day they'd had. You know, it was fantastic. I'd say what's changed is after that first year, when we were really having to go out and look for publishers and say, please, will you come to it? After that first event, the publishers that were there immediately said, do this again and we're there for you. It's different to other festivals. It's got a different vibe. It's, you know, we had 350 people the first year. We had over 430 people the second year. So it's a big turnout, and they're there for the whole day. We make it as inexpensive as we possibly can. So it's not putting people off. You know, the first year we charged £30 for a ticket for an all-day event. What did change in the second year was we put a fringe event on the Friday night. We did a noir at the bar at the Crab and Walser, which is a pub restaurant just next to the venue. And we said, that's free, come along. And it allowed us to invite more authors, not just the panelists. What we're doing for 2024, and this is really just the way it's growing, is we're doing more fringe events, again, free if you buy an all-day ticket, but we're doing something on the Friday night, the Saturday night, and the Sunday morning. So people can come to Whitley Bay for the weekend, see more of the area. We've got a few surprises that we're currently working on that may or may not be Vera related. But what we're trying to do is involve more and more of the local businesses as well, because all of us, myself, Vic, and we're really proud of what the Northeast and what Whitley Bay and Cullercoats and Tynemouth and the surrounding areas have to offer. And we love it, and we love the businesses here. So we're trying to encourage more of the businesses to get involved and make it a weekend that people can come to at an inexpensive price.
It sounds wonderful, Simon, and we must pay tribute, I suppose, to Ann Cleeves as well. You've mentioned Ann a number of times, and I know Ann back in 2005, 2006, like she won the Dagger, right? The crime fiction sort of prestigious award. But then about 10, 11 years later, she was awarded the Diamond Dagger, which is kind of the top echelons when it comes to crime writing. So, I mean, you truly have a true patron at the top of their game, well respected internationally in this field. And it's wonderful to see Anne and of course, the other people that are involved behind the scenes, I'm sure, helping out with the success of Bay Tales. And I think it really, you know, just as an outsider looking in, it definitely gained significant momentum in year two. And it sounds like what you're describing in 2024, it's going to be bigger and better again with additional events either side of sort of the main day, the main festival, which is really, really exciting.
It is.
And what about that? What about that importance of community? That's what I really wanted to ask you, if I can, just for a second, Simon, because, you know, the love of books, writing, and crime fiction in particular, there's a very strong community, and it's almost, this is probably not going to come out right, but it's almost invisible to some people who maybe aren't in that genre. And then the minute you scratch the surface, you realize how big and how helpful this community is. You must see that a lot.
Absolutely. And a couple of examples of that, I think, again, growing out of the online element of it. So we had a lot of elderly viewers that wouldn't be able to go to physical events at a bar in Newcastle in the middle of the week, but they were able to tune in for the online show. We had people with mental health issues that were suffering from depression and were very open about it, and said that event anchored in the week really gave them a chance to talk to people, online chat and so on, and just feel involved in something. And it was lovely to see with the physical event that some of those people came along to it. And we know that for some of them, it was a challenge. And we saw the communication beforehand saying, I'd like to come, but I don't know anybody and I'm not good in public places. And this was on social media, and people just saying, we'll look after you. And they did.
Yeah,
and
wonderful.
I think that's really strong. We try to involve, as I say, we keep the prices low. I don't mean this as a sales pitch, but it does make a difference to be able to say, here's an all-day event that you come to that's not going to cost you £100, £150 or anything like that. It is affordable. And another element of that is we find people can't come. You know, they bought their tickets and then something happens. It's always going to happen when you've got 400, 450 people coming to an event. There's going to be a couple of them. We find they don't tend to ask for their money back. They say, here's the ticket. If anybody else can use it, you know, I'll give it away. You know, if you're low income and wouldn't otherwise be able to come and things like that. We also try to involve book clubs. And we do special arrangements with them where, you know, if they come as a group, we'll also arrange for an author to do something, if we can, with their book group, whether that be online or in person, a local author. We had schools attending this year. So we had a local school where a couple of during National Book Day and literary weeks, they had some prize winners from fiction competitions in the school. And they came along with the winning students, and we presented them with prizes on stage and so on. So we're very much trying to get the community as involved as possible. And that really is a central part of this to us. You know, we call ourselves Bay Tales. We're very proud of the Bay, and we want to, I would say 65% of the people coming are from the Northeast region, 35% from outside, but that figure is growing and there's more and more coming. I know for next year, we've already got people coming from the US. We had people come from Canada for the first and second shows, from all over Europe. So, you know, people are coming. It's easy to get to these days at Newcastle Airport. We're not far from there. And it's just giving that exposure to the region as well. And, you know, if you're coming, spend a few days here, go out and see it. There's a lot of beautiful stuff to see and a lot of incredible places to eat. It's not as expensive as getting a hotel in London or wherever, you know, so there's lots of options there. We had one couple at the first event that decided to move up to the Northeast after they'd come to the event, you know, so it's a powerful place.
That's testament, I think, to the success. As you're speaking, it reminds me, we had a lady on the show called Nikki Simpson, and she's a founder and director of something called the International Magazine Centre in Edinburgh. And she's not originally from the area, but she lives there and been living there for many, many years now. But she was talking a little bit about how sort of the magazine money, it sort of gets sucked into London almost. And you were sort of touching on that a little bit in terms of when one of the publishers, you know, some of the publishers went, oh yeah, this is brilliant, we're in immediately. Of course, count us in. And that's wonderful to hear. And then the one that was maybe not quite so positive, why would people travel up there? The work that you're doing in the northeast of the UK, northeast of England, it's very, very important for the community. And you were sort of touching on that earlier, weren't you, in terms of bringing other businesses on board, whether it's from a tourism perspective or an awareness perspective. It does sort of radiate out in this ripple effect. Do you see that now?
Absolutely. And I mean, I think we see it on a practical level. In the first year, the authors and the publishers were extremely generous donating prizes. So we ran a raffle on the day. And the first year we did it for the local RNLI group. And we raised money for that from authors, giving everything from naming a character in a future book after a winner to one-to-one writing seminars for would-be authors in the audience. The second year we did that on a larger scale, really, more prizes, more offers. We did that for the Bay Food Bank, which is a local charity. And we had the RNLI there at the lunchtime with their collection buckets. So in both cases, raising money for charity, and people were very, very generous in their donations, both in the prize giving and in buying the tickets to support that. So on a very practical level, yes, that's one way we're doing it, but the slightly less obvious way really is just getting local businesses involved as much as we can. Whether we have the local bookshop, the Bound Bookshop, which is an independent bookshop in Whitley Bay. They're there on the day selling the books, and people can get them signed and so on. But it's a fabulous award-winning independent bookshop on our doorstep. So it's really encouraging people to use that and not just the multinational online options that they have.
Yeah, so important. And are you, last sort of question on this, because I do want to ask you a couple of other questions as well in a moment, but like we had on the show Vanessa Fox O'Loughlin, very well known sort of crime writer, probably one of the best-selling crime writers in Ireland, always in the top of the charts. And you must be, my question is really, you must be finding that the more authors that got involved, maybe from year 1 to year 2, and that word spreading, are you reaching out to more international authors now?
Certainly on the online show, we had a lot of big names internationally. We haven't had too many international authors at the Bay Tales. We have our fringe events organized for 2024. We're still waiting to hear from publishers who they're going to be sending, because our business model is we go to the publishers and rather than do panels by themes, we say to, for example, next year we've got Simon & Schuster, Pan Macmillan, Penguin Michael Joseph. We've got them and we say, you've got the panel, you choose who you bring, we'll provide a moderator, and we get some fantastic moderators, either authors or journalists or experts in the field. So, you give us the authors, we'll craft a theme around that and find something. But yes, I mean, it was the thrill of my life on the online show. For example, my hero, Lawrence Block, who's just one of the all-time greats of crime fiction writing, obviously based in New York. We had him on his, I think it was his 82nd birthday, come on the show online on the day of his new book being published. That wouldn't happen if we were a small physical event at that stage. So the online certainly gives us a route into that. And we had a lot of international authors. We do know that budgets are tight for publishers all over the place. But, there's a lot of good UK Ireland-based authors. So we had Brian McGilloway come across from Ireland for this year's festival, who was a massive hit with the audience. So we do have authors coming from all over, and just a real range of them. And yeah, the publishers give us a nice mix of who they know are going to be popular. And then we have the ones who've had books adapted for Netflix and Amazon and Screen and so on, or are just massive selling authors in their own right. So we get a really good mixture.
Yeah. It sounds fantastic. And 2024 looks like it's going to be a bumper festival for Bay Tales. So I do wish you continued success in that. But before I let you go, I want to squeeze in a couple of questions if I can, Simon. One is about your own learning style, because obviously you, from this world of publishing and digital, and now running Bay Tales. But what do you do yourself? I mean, I'm assuming you're an avid reader, but do you like audiobooks as well? Do you watch YouTube videos? Do you like meeting people and learning that way? What's your sort of onboarding style when it comes to keeping your finger on the pulse and information?
A mixture, really. I mean, professionally, obviously I provide consultancy services, both for publishing, for charities, for educational businesses as well. I mean, I went back to study and did my master's level diploma in strategy and innovation at Saïd Business School, which is part of Oxford University. I did that when I was 48 years old. So I am a believer in traditional educational methods. In terms of my listening, absolutely, I love audiobooks. I find, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, whether it's learning new business techniques and so on, I find I can't listen to an audiobook the way I would sit and read a print book. So we were on holiday just last week. We were lucky enough to get away, and I can't lie on the beach and listen to an audiobook, but I love to listen to them when I'm cooking, when I'm driving. I listen to a lot of audiobooks that way. I do watch far too much YouTube and things like that. And yes, because my background for so much of my working life was providing training, I look in all areas to learn new things, whether it's online MOOCs, or whether it's tutorials, or whether it's self-directed training. I'm a real magpie in terms of how I learn.
Yeah, that's great. And what about as you look forward now? You're obviously probably very busy behind the scenes thinking about what needs to be done for the next Bay Tales. But what's on your radar? How do you work that planning? When you think about it in the context of the next 6, 9, 12 months, what are you hoping to achieve there?
I think more community involvement. I think hopefully raise more money for charity. Expose more people to new writers, and that's a two-way street. Get writers out there in front of people. We're hoping to do more things with local schools and local groups. Again, going back to Anne, obviously she does a huge amount of work with local libraries. We're big fans of the libraries. In 2024, I can reveal the fringe events. 2 of them are happening at the local pub. So on the Friday night, we have a noir at the bar. On the Saturday night, we have the Northern Crime Rights Syndicate, which is a group of local writers, including Trevor Wood, Judith O'Reilly, Rob Scragg, Fiona Erskine, and others. And they do an improvised panel show where they come up with a book within the space of the event. And then on the Sunday morning, we have at Whitley Bay Library, the Red Hot Chili Writers, which is Abir Mukherjee and Vaseem Khan, which if any of your viewers or listeners are looking for a good, fun podcast around writing, for me, that is the best one out there. And they're brilliant, brilliant writers in their own right, but also fantastically entertaining presenters. So we're going to be having them. We tried to make the events as inclusive as we can for all types of audience members, whatever your age or whatever your background is. We don't want it to be off-putting. And likewise, through the fringe events, even if we're not getting diversity within the panels, which we do, don't get me wrong, the publishers are fantastic in supporting that. It gives us a chance to include a wider range of writers, whether that's diversity in terms of their publishing history or within themselves. It's just a very open. Someone said it's the festival with heart. Someone said to us this year, and that really made it for us. We thought that's what we want to be. We just want to keep bringing more heart to it.
Sounds good. Sounds
and
very.
If somebody
very
wants to publish my novels, if that comes out of it as well, that's not a bad thing.
That's the cherry on top, right?
Yeah,
Simon?
It hasn't happened yet.
Very good. Well, look, I've only got 2 more questions for you. One is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience, or anything else you'd like to maybe double down on before we finish today? And secondly, and importantly, if people want to find out more about Bay Tales or connect with you, where's the best place to point people to?
So I'd answer both questions with the same thing, really. If anyone is just looking for some free reading material or to find out about more authors, they can go to our website, baytales.com. It's all free on there, and you'll see, I think it's about 80 hours of recordings of the online shows. So you can see authors on there like Ann Cleeves, Ian Rankin, Linwood Barclay, Greg Hurwitz, there's Louise Candlish, Sarah Vaughan, CJ Tudor, the list goes on and on. There's over 250 authors featured on there. It's all completely free. There's also a whole load of fiction, short stories on there that authors have donated, non-fiction. There's reviews. So it's a really good free resource for anybody that's just looking for something new to read in crime fiction. You'll also see on there more details about the 2024 event as we firm things up. So that's a good place to go. But yes, that's my pitch, both free and hopefully if anyone is in the area or fancies coming, you can contact us for tickets and come join us. It's a great weekend.
Although that sounds wonderful. Continued success with that. It brings us nicely to the end of the episode. I do encourage everybody to check out Bay Tales and what's happening. It's growing year on year. It's a real place with heart that people need to check out. Thanks to everybody who's been watching or listening to this episode today with Simon Bewick. Make sure that you like, follow, subscribe, do everything I need you to do to help support the podcast. And I hope that you'll join me back here for more discussions with creatives and leaders and thinkers. So thank you, Simon. It's been a pleasure to catch up with you again today.
Thanks so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.